Okay, this is still Algebra 1 9.6 notes, and this is example 2. So this is solving by substitution. So when you use substitution, you are taking one equation and substituting it into another. Because the second equation is y equals, you're taking this side of the equation and substituting it in for the y in the other equation. Because it's equal to y, that's why it's okay to substitute it there. So now you have negative 2x plus 3 equals x squared plus x minus 1. So now you have your equation all in x's. Get all the x's to one side. I'm going to move this 2x and the 3 over. The reason I like to move it to the right on this one is it will keep that x squared right here positive. So I have x squared plus 3x minus 4. All right, now this is a quadratic, so remember you can solve a quadratic in 5 different ways. On this one, it looks to me like it's going to factor well. So we ask what multiplies to negative 4 and adds to 3. And so that is going to be 4 and negative 1. So this will factor to x plus 4, x minus 1. And then you set each factor equal to 0. And you subtract the 4, and I get negative 4, and add the 1, and I get 1. Now, because this is normally, when we are solving quadratics, we would just get these two answers. But go back up to the equation. This equation has both x's and y's. So that tells me when I do my answer, I need an x and a y. So I can take this x, negative 4, and plug it back into either equation. I'm going to choose the bottom equation because it's linear, so it's significantly easier. So I'm plugging in negative 4 into this equation, and I can type that on my calculator, and I get 11. So what that means is when x is negative 4, y is 11, so the point negative 4, 11 is the solution. Now do the same thing with this x equals 1. Plug it back into the equation negative 2x plus 3, plug in the 1, and so you end up with 1. So the point 1, 1 is the solution. So how I check to know if I need just x's or both an x and a y is I look at the original equation and see, does the original equation have x's or x's and y's? Okay, the second equation is even easier for substituting. This negative 4 equals y. So on the first equation where y is, we can plug in negative 4. So your negative 4 equals x squared plus 4x plus, oh, sorry, there's nothing over there currently. So x squared plus 4x. Now we can add the 4 to both sides. So we get 0 equals x squared plus 4x plus 4. I always try to get it equal to 0 so I can solve. On this one, I could solve using, it looks like it could factor. Completing the square would work. Quadratic formula would work. So let's go ahead and factor this because it looks like it will. It multiplies to 4 and it has to add to 4. So that's 2 and 2. So I get x plus 2, x plus 2. Now, since those are repeated factors, that tells me it's going to have a repeated solution. So I only have to do 1. So I set x plus 2 equal to 0, and I get negative 2. Now, I don't even have to plug it back in to find the y value, because at the very beginning, it said y is negative 4. So my solution is negative 2, negative 4. Okay, this is example 3, which is going to go ahead and solve by elimination. So elimination is what we showed in the first video in our warm-ups. That's where we want a variable to cancel out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this equation by negative 1. It doesn't matter which one I do. I'm trying to get the y's to cancel out. That's always my goal, get the y's to cancel out on these. So the first equation I'm just writing down. And then I multiply this equation by negative 1. So I get negative y equals 3x plus 8. And look how I line them up. Now if I add or subtract straight down, the y minus y makes 0. X squared comes down. Negative 3x plus 3x also happens to make 0. And then negative 2 plus 8 is plus 6. So I'm going to solve that. This looks perfect for solving using square roots because it only has an x squared. Let's subtract the 6. All right, and then we go to square root. And when we square root a negative, we find out that it has no real solution. All right, let's go ahead and do the same thing here. Pick one of the equations to multiply by -1 because you want one of the equations to have a negative y so that the y cancels out, eliminates out, because then you will only have x's. So I'm going to multiply this whole equation by -1, and so I end up with negative y and negative 2x and plus 1. All right, when we add straight down, y minus y is 0, x squared comes down, the 2x's cancel, and -5 plus 1 is -4. This also looks like it could solve by square roots because it only has x squared, so it seems perfect. So I'm going to add the 4 over, because when you do square roots, you try to get x squared by itself. So then I square root both sides. The square root of 4 is 2 and -2. And so your solution, you're going to have a -2 as the x and a 2 as the x. You still have to find the y values. Looking back at this original equation, you also need y values. So I can plug the 2 and the -2 into this equation or this equation. It doesn't actually matter. I'm going to choose the bottom equation because it looks easier. So if I plug in -2, and I can type that in my calculator if I want, I get -5. And then if I plug in 2, then I get 3. And those are my solutions.